I find really interesting in the world of internal family systems therapy, IFS, is more and more it's becoming recognized that what is so good about IFS and what makes it so effective is not any protocol, it's not the fact that someone is a doctor. In fact, there are no doctors in IFS, no doctors of IFS. You can't study to be a doctor of IFS. It's not being a psychologist. It's much more about what IFS discovered after it formed itself as a construct or a logical approach. It's about the self-energy, the presence, and that has no requirement whatsoever for the person to be a doctor or have any qualifications whatsoever. It has no requirement. It's more likely to be a presence for someone who's just more naturally spiritual or has found that deeper nature inside themselves, and it doesn't matter whether they're a carpenter, a mechanic, a doctor of psychology, a doctor of culture, whatever doctor you decide to be when you're trained in IFS, or whatever counselor you are before you train in IFS. It's more leaning towards the humanistic side of therapy, the more in-person side of therapy, than the structural approaches, the more lineal approaches, which are proved to be a certain way, and then therefore make you act in a certain way or think in a certain way to help you in that way. It's more about the internal process that is led by the deeper nature of a person than an outside structure pushed at the person. And this is very much why IFS also leans from the shamanic world of having a relationship with the guiding forces. So IFS is itself a guiding structure. It has a protocol, logical steps, and like a lot of therapies, and so it kind of leans from lends itself to the shamanic world, where invite guides and to know that you yourself are not a guide, and not to trust the guides. If a guide can be useful for you to help your nature unfold, then that's great. But what is the first order, what's the most important factor is you, the presence that you are, and that you is already carrying anything else, and your parts learn to carry information to fit in the world as secondary. It can be confusing when self-like parts present as self and they rail against parts and other information that your system has chosen to carry, or favors what the external as is invited in or allowed in, which is detracting from your spirit. Whereas self-energy will put you and your parts first before anything that's been internalized, whether that internalization goes unrecognized as a burden when it actually is, because it's a social norm, and although it's a social norm, it's detracting your nature. So it's like it should be. So your managing the system will help you get along by doing that, even though it's going against your nature. But connecting to that deeper self-actual place is more concerned about you. It's being self-led, not other-led, not a model, not led by any model or external social group and how they form themselves. It's more about your energy. And that's the practice in groups, is to allow each person's nature come through and hold what is there, even if it's disturbing, and it's disturbed the system in a person, and to not blame them for what how society has affected them, to instead support them instead of rail against them and pathologize them, which a lot of cultural scripts seem to do. So it's just wondering if that's something to reflect on that might make sense. I'll just leave it there.